But we do begin with the economy. The Federal Reserve deciding to leave interest rates unchanged in June. The decision comes after this week's inflation report, which shows inflation in the U.S. finally cooling off.
And the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell spoke about what the Fed is focused on moving forward. Okay. What he said was they're continuing to track it. To discuss, let's bring in ABC News business reporter Alexis Christoforous along with our Elizabeth Schulze live at the White House. Alexis, just break this down for us, this decision. They're skipping a month. We got so used to it, talking to you every month. Okay, how high is it going? What does it mean?
Yeah.
How big of a deal is this?
Well, you know, they telegraphed pretty well that they wanted to skip a hike at this meeting, so it doesn't come as a huge surprise. They're putting that Fed rate hike on ice, at least for now. Don't get too excited. It doesn't mean no more interest rate hikes in the future. In fact, today's decision by the Fed was unanimous. All central bank policymakers did decide to skip a rate hike this time around, but most of them are signaling at least 2 more rate hikes before the year is through. And why pause now? Look, they've hiked interest rates 10 straight times, and they want to take a moment and see how those rate hikes are seeping through the economy, how they're impacting the economy, because those rate hikes also have a lag effect, right? So they're trying to sort of catch up with all of those rate hikes. We're seeing the impact in different areas of the economy. The pace of higher prices starting to slow, inflation now at 4% versus the 9.1% we had last June, but we still have a very strong job market. Consumer spending is also quite strong, and the housing market is actually rebounding despite those higher mortgage rates. So it is clear that the Fed still has some more work ahead of it.
And Elizabeth, the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, saying that they want to get inflation down to 2%, but inflation is currently up 4%. So how do they get the rest of the way there?
Well, Kara, these were surprisingly aggressive comments by Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, basically saying we still have a ways to go before we get inflation back to our goal, which is 2%. And as you heard, it's currently running at about 4%. So the Fed chair is saying we're going to keep working to get to that goal. And what we're going to have to do is keep raising interest rates. Remember, the way that this works is that higher interest rates are supposed to make consumers and businesses spend less. That reduces the amount of dollars out there floating in the economy, and that would bring inflation down. Until that happens, the Fed chair says they're going to be aggressive. And he even suggested that there's this possibility that they could raise rates again at the July meeting, just 6 weeks from now. You know, one of the questions here really is how long exactly is this lag for some of these higher interest rates? How long does it take for that to play out in the economy? And one of the comments that struck me just now from Fed Chair Powell is that in a time of the past, we would see these interest rate hikes and they would slowly move through the economy. People would gradually reduce their spending, and it would take a little bit of time from the time the Fed took action for that to actually show up in consumer spending. What he says now is we're in an age where the market and people are looking at these moves in real time. So it might need to do a better job, the Fed, of telegraphing this in kind of real time. And it might be that the economy reacts faster than it did in the past, which is perhaps one of the reasons why they're taking this more aggressive communication right now, even though they did do this pause today, guys.
So, Alexis, will this move change? I mean, how are people viewing this potential recession?
Now, the Fed is still trying to achieve that soft landing of raising interest rates enough to cool the economy and bring inflation down, but not so much that we fall into a recession. And today, Fed officials actually raised their projections for growth and inflation. They now see inflation ending the year closer to 4%. They believe we're going to get an unemployment rate of around 4.1% by year's end. We're right now at 3.7%. And they even see stronger economic growth this year of 1%. So I think you'd be hard-pressed to say we're on the precipice of a recession with projections that look that strong. Also want to note that the central bankers in Australia and Canada did something very similar recently. They skipped raising interest rates at a recent meeting and then went right back to raising them the following meeting because they just couldn't get a hand on inflation.
Alexis, maybe the Fed is accomplishing this soft landing. I'm just wondering, to drive inflation down to 2%, is that a magic number? And does that mean they want to put people out of work, that essentially that interest rate is so important that it's worth the risk of recession. I mean, how bad is inflation right now for people?
All right, it sounds counterintuitive, and even Fed Chair Powell has said in the past that even if it means a higher unemployment rate and pushing the economy into a recession for a time, they believe that the trade-off was worth it to bring inflation lower. So the goal is not to put people out of work, but if it becomes a byproduct of higher interest rates, the Fed is saying it could be worth it in the long run. And still, you know, we have, despite all of these moves by the Fed, a job market that remains very, very resilient. I can tell you the stock market, though, selling off today because investors were hoping the Fed would not be signaling more interest rate hikes to come, and it looks like they are now trying to price in at least 2 more rate hikes by 2024.
All right, Alexis, Elizabeth, thanks, ladies.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.